this is Craig Brown, and welcome to Passages. Passages is a space to explore Bible passages used for preaching, reflection, and prayer. My hope is that Passages will shine a unique light on text used for preaching at the First Free Methodist Church of Seattle, or for anyone looking to dive deeper into the Bible. Today's passage is Exodus chapter 16, verses 1 through 12. It's the basis for the sermon at First Free Methodist Church on November 2, 2025. It's part of our series called The Lord's Prayer, a model for life and joy with the Lord, lessons in the life of Moses. So each week we read a portion of the Lord's Prayer, and we also read a passage from Moses' story that goes with it. And so this week we'll be looking at the Lord's Prayer in Matthew chapter 6, verse 11 with this single line, "Give us this day our daily bread." And the story from Exodus 16, beginning at verse 1, goes right along with it. So let's hear the passage. Then they set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the sons of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departure from the land of Egypt. But the whole congregation of the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The sons of Israel said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, when we ate bread until we were full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this entire assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, so that I may test them, whether or not they will walk in my instruction. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily." So Moses and Aaron said to all the sons of Israel, "At the evening you will know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your grumblings against the Lord. And what are we, that you grumble against us?" And Moses said, "This will happen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the morning, and bread to eat in the evening, and bread to the full in the morning. For the Lord hears your grumblings which you grumble against him. And what are we? Your grumblings are not against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Say to all the congregation of the sons of Israel, 'Come forward before the Lord, for he has heard your grumblings.'" And it came about, as Aaron spoke to the entire congregation of the sons of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "I have heard the grumblings of the sons of Israel. Speak to them, saying, At twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God." Well, we're going to take a look at this text in a few different sections. That'll be helpful for us to examine one at a time. Let's just look at verses 1 through 3, which is the so-called grumbling that you've heard a number of times in this text. Now, in verses 1 to 3, we read in verse 1 that it's been 45 days since the people left Egypt. It says the 15th day of the second month, so about a month and a half. And they have been staying at a place called Elim. Elim is a nice place. It has water, palm trees, dates that grow on the trees. It's a little oasis. And this was the place where the children of Israel, along with Moses, stayed after they had crossed over the Red Sea. So this is very recent in terms of when they left Egypt, as the text has already told us. Now, their destination is Sinai. So in order to get from Elim to Sinai, they're going to have to cross a desert to get there. And so as they leave on day 46, they go across this wilderness. And the wilderness is called the Wilderness of Sin. Now, the word sin there is the title or the name of it, not necessarily the theological word for sin. So don't get the two confused. This isn't about there was sin that happened in the wilderness, so it's called the Wilderness of Sin. No, it's just its name. It's called the Wilderness of Sin. Now, it's ironic because of what happens in the wilderness, but don't confuse the two things. This is the area they have to cross in order to get to Mount Sinai. Now, scholars have tried for years to trace their exact journey from leaving Egypt. So if you pull up any map online to look at this, there's all sorts of variations and changes. There's just a real lack of certainty about the exact path that was taken. But what happens in the wilderness of sin, more important than how they navigated, is a foreshadowing of sorts. It says that the whole congregation, it said, grumbled against Moses and Aaron. Now, this word grumbled occurs 5 different times in this short passage of Scripture. It's in verse 2, verse 7, verse 8, verse 9, and verse 12. Now, that grumbling means is that they simply complained about their conditions. And it follows a very human pattern. So when faced with hardship of the wilderness of sin, here's what they did. They said, if only we had died in Egypt. So this is a bit overly dramatic. It's assuming that they're going to die here as well, and assuming, too, that life in Egypt was fantastic. It then says, the people say, we sat by pots of meat. This is somewhat of a fantasy language. Eating meat was expensive in antiquity, and you only did it on special occasions, so the notion that they sat by pots of meat every night isn't exactly accurate. And then they say, we ate bread until we were full. Again, this is an exaggeration on their part of slave life in Egypt. Remember, this is only 45 days later, but yet they look back on their time of slavery as how awesome it was, and we had full pots of meat and bread till we couldn't eat anymore. And then the language turns accusatory in their complaint. They say, you have brought us out here. They focus not on the God who liberated them, but instead on Moses. Now, Moses knows where they need to go, but the complaining of the people in the wilderness of sin drives a much deeper question. Moses has been to Sinai. He knows where it is. The question isn't how will they get there or where they're going. The question is whether the people will be faithfully obedient in that journey. And there's more of that to come. But for right now, let's just hold this key passageway. We are long to trust God and quick to complain. We are long to trust God and quick to complain. You know, the wilderness of sin is aptly named. Now remember, there's no connection between the name of this place and the concept of sin. It's simply coincidence and nothing more, but yet the irony is not lost on us. After the 10 signs of God's power in Egypt and the parting of the Red Sea, the complaining begins. We are keenly in touch with our lacking, our needing, our wanting. We feel it quickly and we give voice to it quickly. So no matter what God has done in the past, we oftentimes find ourselves in the exact same place as the Israelites, questioning. Like the Israelites in the wilderness, we're quick to complain, but sometimes longer than we need to be in developing our trust in God. We now turn to the middle of this passage, verses 4 through 8, to take a look at God's provision for the people. Beginning at verse 4, God speaks a word to Moses about the complaints he is receiving. Now, there's nothing said about God's compassion or validation of their complaint. There's only action that's taken in response to it. And God tells Moses that he is going to rain bread on them. The word there is used for bread is manna. And it literally means, what is it? Manna is translated best into English, not as bread, but what is it? The people shall go out, and they're only going to gather 1 day's worth of it. Now, why becomes clear in that will they be faithfully obedient? Then God says in this text, he goes, I'm doing this so that I may test them whether or not they will walk in my instruction. Now remember, this whole episode happens before they arrive at Sinai and the giving of the law. So there's no 10 commandments yet. There's no laws for ritual purification. None of that stuff has been given to them yet. So in some ways, this is God's first law given to them. I want you to go out and harvest this bread, manna, but I only want you to harvest a day's worth. Now, whether it's raining bread from the sky or it is part of a substance that emanates from a fruit in a tree that's found in the desert, is something that other brighter minds can argue. There are groups of people that harvest this rich discharge that comes from a fruit of a certain kind of tree in the desert, and they make it into bread even today, but it doesn't keep till the next day. So I'll let you all sort that out however you want to, about whether it's just literally rains bread from the sky or they're harvesting this that grows off of desert trees, whatever it is. But what God has asked is hard. These are people who know an agrarian way of life. So there is no such thing as a farmer who goes outside each day to harvest enough food for that day. It assumes a lot of things. Number one, that there's something to harvest 365 days out of the year. Everyone knows that when farmers plant, they plant and then there's a big harvest. And then the question comes is, how are they going to take that harvest and sustain it over a period of time? They can't possibly eat all the food at the same time. So you gather everything and then you use it up as you go. The instruction here is quite different. They're only to go out and harvest what they need for that one day. Now, there's an exception to this. It says, as we move toward verse 7 and then into verse 8, that on the sixth day when they go out to gather, they're to gather a double portion. And what that means is they're to gather nothing for the seventh day, which is the Sabbath. So each of these guidelines is designed to continually shape the faithful obedience of the people. Now, Moses and Aaron then spoke to the Israelites about the provision of God and the included clarification. Beyond the cloud, which has been leading them by day, they will experience this provision of food in the morning and in the evening. And Moses even says that you will see the glory of the Lord, of course, pointing to several things: the cloud that guides them by day, the manna that they're going to harvest, and the meat that we haven't read about yet that is going to be presented to them. Moses then tells them that God, Yahweh, has heard their complaining. Moses acknowledges it. God does not. Yet Moses makes it clear that their complaining is actually directed to God and not he and Moses, or he and Aaron. Moses is trying to make it clear that the grousing and complaining of the people is something that they need to direct toward God. He continues to use this word grumbling and complaining in repetitive fashion. The people grumbled in verse 2, but Moses now uses the word against them in verses 7, 8, 9, and 12. And Moses tells them that God is going to give you meat in the evening and bread in the morning. That Yahweh hears their grumblings, which they grumble against him. Notice how he repeats the word. In Hebrew, you'd pick it up a little bit better. There's a little bit of a word play there that makes it kind of like a little rhyme. And Moses is really on them about this. And Moses asks this rhetorical question 2 different times in this text. What are we? In other words, as you're grumbling, he's saying, what are we? Your grumbling is directed toward God. Moses makes clear that they're not complaining, that they are complaining about the God who saved them, not Moses and Aaron's leadership. These grumblings and complainings are directed to God, and Moses points to the heart of the matter in the wilderness of sin. And that opens up another key passageway for us. And it is that God provides daily bread. When we pray this line in the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread, oftentimes we're focused on the bread. And perhaps our eye may need to land elsewhere. Give us this day our daily. Anyway, if we just stop there for a minute, that might be a better focus for us. Give us this day our daily. Like the Israelites, Jesus tells the disciples in the prayer to focus clearly. The energy is not gathering, getting, having, keeping, or accumulating. The Israelites are not to do that, and neither are we. So in every action of life, even those for survival, they have to be directed toward a faithful obedience. The test that God put the Israelites in is the same one we face all the time. Will we trust in God's provision for each day? Give us this day our daily, fill in the blank. And that question is one that we constantly struggle with. that we want to know what the plan is. We want to know what the outcome is. What we have a harder time doing is walking day by day, counting on God's provision for us. We now come to the closing several verses of the text in verses 9 to 12, and this is about the ongoing promise of provision. Now, Moses continues in this discourse of instruction to the people, telling Aaron to share a message with the people. He tells them to gather everyone together and come before the Lord, because God has heard your grumblings or complaining. It's in every way a brilliant move. Moses forces the people in every way to make their complaint directly to God. That he is, in a sense, by telling Aaron to bring the people together before the Lord, Moses and Aaron are getting out of the equation. There's no triangulation here. He simply reads it for what it is. The thing they're complaining to him about is what they're really complaining to God about. And so he needs to see that happen. Now, before they continue to Sinai, some things need to be set straight. The people, as they're listening to Aaron tell them and give them these instructions, it says they looked out into the wilderness and they saw the cloud which had guided them. And the cloud, remember, is the presence of Yahweh with the people. God is guiding them as they go through the wilderness. Yahweh spoke to Moses again and said that he has heard their complaining. And there are 3 distinct statements made to Moses by God that he is to convey to the people. The first one, God says, is at twilight you shall eat meat. Notice the first act happens at the ending of what we consider our day, but in the Jewish culture and world, it's the beginning of the day. The day begins at sunset. So at twilight you shall eat meat. In the morning you shall eat bread, which is manna. And third, you shall know that I am the Lord your God. See, the rules are set. There's a cloud to guide them and sustenance to care for their journey. Why? It's a matter of faithful obedience. God makes it clear that all of this provision, all of this care is so that they can know him. And that's a key passageway for us, that God is found in the daily rhythm of the ordinary. Too often we look for great moments with God in our spiritual life. But in Exodus 16, we find a God who works in food and directions. Simple, daily stuff. We have to wonder about our own faithful obedience in every moment. Do we treat God's leadership so that it is active in the big moments of the day or the week or the month only? Or is it active in the small, seemingly insignificant moments of every day? You see, our faithful obedience also has to land in the daily rituals and routines of life, even in food and direction. This is how we begin to feel what is said in the text, that we will know that the Lord is our God when we begin to live in this rhythm, this daily rhythm of the ordinary with God. It's so important for us to not just think about God in the big things, but to think about God in the small things and the daily rhythm of the ordinary. I want to thank you for listening to the podcast here at First Free Methodist Church. You can listen into the same podcast feed for our sermon podcast each week and our conversational podcast called Connections. All 3 passages, our sermon podcast and Connections, can all be found right here in the FFMC podcast. I also encourage you to stop at our church's website, ffmc.org, to learn more about Free Methodism and how you can connect with our community. For now, I bid you all grace. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.